What if everything you've been taught about love and connection is wrong? Imagine this. You're watching someone effortlessly draw people in, not by chasing, but by simply being themselves. They're not loud, not over-available, yet people can't help but gravitate toward them. What if I told you that the key to this kind of influence doesn't lie in effort or manipulation, but in mastering the art of stillness? This is the power of Stoicism. In this video, we'll reveal how shifting your presence can make you unforgettable. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share will change everything you thought you knew about attraction. Let me ask you a simple question. How many times have you found yourself chasing connection? Have you ever felt the pressure to text first, to always be the one to reach out, to keep the conversation going, to be the one constantly available, thinking that doing all this would make someone value you more? You're not alone. It's a narrative we're all taught from an early age. The more effort you put in, the more love and connection you'll receive in return. But here's the truth. Effort in relationships, at least the way most of us understand it, is often an illusion, a false sense of control that we hold on to because, honestly, it makes us feel secure. When we're constantly chasing, texting first, always present in someone's life, we think it means that we're building connection. But in reality, it's draining. And worse, it's giving away your power. Have you ever noticed how the people who seem the most magnetic, the ones who draw people in effortlessly, aren't the ones who are always chasing attention? They're not scrambling to stay relevant in someone's mind. They just are. There's a quiet strength in their presence that commands respect, that makes people naturally gravitate toward them. You've seen it before, maybe with a friend or a colleague, someone who doesn't need to try hard, but people still flock to them. How? They understand something most of us don't. Real attraction doesn't come from effort. It comes from the ability to stop trying so hard. This is exactly what Stoicism teaches us. The Stoics, ancient philosophers who lived by a powerful code, understood that the key to inner peace, influence, and lasting relationships lies not in trying to control others, not in trying to impress them, but in mastering ourselves. In understanding that we don't need to chase love, connection, or attention, because when we're grounded in who we are, those things come to us. In this section, I want to explore the deep illusion we've all bought into, the belief that connection is built through effort. Most people think that if they put in more work, if they show up first, respond quicker, give more of themselves, they'll earn love. But what happens when you do this? You're no longer seen as a person with your own boundaries, your own life. You become an option. You become the one always chasing, always available, always striving for recognition. In the moment, it might feel good. You feel wanted. You feel noticed. But deep down, something doesn't sit right. And here's why. Relationships based on constant effort don't build lasting attraction. They build dependency. You're seeking validation by giving away your power, by showing up for others when they haven't even shown up for you. It's a one-sided dynamic that drains you over time, and in the process, you lose sight of what really matters, yourself. The Stoics were not saying that relationships aren't important, but they emphasized that your sense of value should never be determined by someone else. You should never have to beg to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be chosen. Your value is inherent, not dependent on how much you do for someone else or how much they respond to you, and this is where the shift needs to happen. Stop chasing. Instead, focus on embodying something deeper, something rooted in self-respect and inner strength. You see, when you stop chasing connection and start focusing on being the best version of yourself, the right people will gravitate toward you. This is not about playing games or creating distance for the sake of manipulation. It's about aligning with your inner purpose, your true self, and letting the rest unfold naturally. The key to breaking free from the illusion of effort is learning to master self-restraint. As Epictetus once said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." That means learning to stop reacting impulsively, to stop jumping at every opportunity to please others, to stop texting first just to feel acknowledged. Instead, take a step back. Reflect. Understand why you feel the need to reach out. Are you doing it because you truly want to connect? Or are you doing it to quell the anxiety of being ignored? The energy you put out is what comes back to you. If you're constantly available, if you're constantly pursuing someone's attention, you send a message that your time, your presence is not valuable. And when people start to feel that you're always there, they stop appreciating it. The magic lies in giving space, in allowing others to miss you. When someone doesn't hear from you for a while, their mind begins to wander. They begin to feel curiosity. What are you doing? Who are you with? Why haven't you responded yet? This absence, this space you leave, is not a void. It's an invitation for someone to wonder about you, to want to know more. This is the subtle dynamic that builds attraction, because the mind craves what it doesn't have, what it doesn't know. That's why a little mystery goes a long way. It's why when you're always showing up first, always filling the silence, people stop feeling the need to lean in. In relationships, emotional contrast is key. Too much presence, too much availability takes away that contrast. It removes the curiosity, the excitement. But when you hold back, when you step into your own stillness, when you stop performing for the approval of others, something shifts. People start to respect you more. They start to notice your absence, and in doing so, they begin to appreciate your presence. It's not manipulation, it's a natural law of attraction. The Stoics understood that true strength lies in stillness, in emotional discipline, and in the ability to detach from the need for validation. They didn't say to cut people off or act distant for no reason. They simply encouraged us to focus on ourselves first, to know our worth, to be at peace with ourselves. When you know that your time, your energy, and your presence are valuable, you no longer feel the need to chase after others to get what you deserve. You stop putting in all the effort to prove your worth. And guess what happens next? People start to see your value without you ever having to say a word. As we move forward, let's dive deeper into how this shift in perspective can truly transform your relationships. How you can move from chasing connection to attracting it effortlessly by simply embodying your own worth. The effort doesn't come from how much you give, but from the clarity of your self-awareness. So, stay with me as we explore how this principle of Stoic stillness can change everything about the way you connect with others, and most importantly, how you connect with yourself. Let's take a moment and think about something powerful. Think about all the times you felt desperate to stay in someone's mind. How many times have you found yourself over-texting, over-responding, and over-communicating just to make sure they don't forget about you? We've all been there. The fear of being overlooked, the urge to stay relevant, to prove that we're worth someone's time and attention. It's instinctual, right? We want to be seen, heard, and acknowledged, and for many of us, we equate love and connection with constant presence. But here's the powerful truth. Absence, the act of stepping back and creating space, can be one of the most magnetic and influential tools in your emotional arsenal. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly drawn to someone who wasn't constantly at your beck and call? When was the last time someone made you pause, made you wonder, made you think, I want to know more about them? That feeling, that desire, that curiosity, it all comes from the power of absence. The idea that you need to be constantly present to be valued is a trap. And when you're always available, when you're the one who's always texting first, always showing up, always giving, something strange happens. You start to lose your value. You begin to feel like an option, not a priority. And worse, those around you begin to take your presence for granted. They stop seeing it as something special. After all, if it's always there, it becomes ordinary, right? People don't chase what's easy to get. They chase what feels just out of reach, what they can't always have. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped rushing to fill every gap? What would happen if you allowed a little space in your relationships? A little absence? Not for the sake of playing games, not out of passive-aggressive intent, but simply as a choice rooted in self-respect and inner strength. When you create that space, whether it's stepping back from someone you're attracted to or giving your friendships the time and space to breathe, you're not being cold or distant, you're commanding something deeper, respect. Here's the thing about space. It naturally creates curiosity. When someone doesn't hear from you for a while, what happens? Their mind starts to wander. They start to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, and why you haven't responded. It's in that silence, that absence, where curiosity begins to rise. People want to know, they want to seek, and in that seeking, they begin to value you more. This is the power of absence. You're creating a vacuum. And in this vacuum, attention, attraction, and desire naturally rush in to fill the space. That's not manipulation. It's the law of human nature. We don't chase what's always available to us. We chase what feels scarce, what feels valuable. And when you make yourself emotionally available, but not at the drop of a hat, you're giving people the space to step up. You're giving them the opportunity to pursue you. When you don't react immediately, when you don't rush to answer every call or text, you signal that your time, your energy, your presence is valuable. You become someone people have to earn access to. And this is a subtle shift. It's not about being rude or dismissive, but about making people earn your attention. Your presence is a gift, not a guarantee. And when people recognize that, they treat it with the respect it deserves. This isn't a new concept. In fact, the Stoics have been preaching this for centuries. They understood the power of emotional distance, not because they were cold, but because they understood that true peace and strength come from within. They knew that we only grow when we step away from the things that try to dominate us, whether that's people, emotions, or external validation. Epictetus taught that no person is free who is not master of themselves. And that's what creating space in relationships allows you to do. Master yourself. You don't need anyone's validation to feel complete. You stop looking for the constant reassurance, the constant need to prove your worth. You just are. Now think about the times when you've been in relationships, whether romantic or friendships, where you were always available. You were the one texting first, always making plans, always reaching out. Over time, did you ever feel drained, like you were the one putting in all the effort while the other person didn't seem to care as much? It's exhausting, isn't it? And eventually that one-sided dynamic causes resentment, not attraction. But the opposite is true when you take a step back. When you give people room to wonder, to miss you, to chase after you. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being emotionally grounded in yourself. You're not waiting for someone to chase you. You're simply allowing them the space to do so if they choose. And this is where the real magic happens. You see, the space you create isn't just about waiting for someone else to fill it. It's about learning to be in that space, to be okay with the silence, the stillness, and the absence. It's learning to be comfortable with yourself, even when others are quiet, even when they're not chasing you. That's when you stop chasing, because you know you're already enough. This also brings us to another important point. The moment you step back, the moment you stop running after someone, you give them the chance to choose you. You stop being the one who's always making the first move. You allow them to make the effort, to show you that they care, to show you that they value you. And when they do, it's more meaningful because it was earned. The energy shifts from one of neediness and dependence to one of self-respect and equality. The moment you step back and create that space, you stop being an option and start being a choice. And when you're chosen, it's because the other person truly wants to be with you, not because you begged for their attention. And that's the kind of connection that lasts, not the forced kind, but the one that develops naturally, with mutual respect. As we dive deeper into this idea, I want you to remember this. Absence isn't just about creating space from others. It's also about creating space within yourself. When you stop rushing to fill the silence, when you stop overthinking, when you stop chasing distractions, you start to really hear yourself. You start to understand what you truly need, what you truly want, and what your soul is craving. That's where true peace begins. So as we move forward, think about this. Are you comfortable with absence? Are you comfortable with creating space, both emotionally and physically, in your relationships? And more importantly, are you ready to allow others to pursue you, to respect you, and to show up for you, not because you begged them to, but because they saw your worth, even in your absence? This is where the shift truly begins. In the space, in the pause, in the absence that creates a magnetic pull, a desire to return, a curiosity that brings people back into your life. This is not a tactic or a game. It's about living in alignment with your own value, your own presence, and your own peace. And when you do that, you won't have to chase anyone ever again. They'll come to you. Stay with me as we move into the next section, where we'll explore the importance of aligning your actions with your inner truth and how to cultivate that energy that commands respect without asking for it. Let's keep going. Let's dive into a concept that might be difficult to grasp at first, but I promise it's one of the most liberating things you can learn in your life. Emotional detachment. Now, before you assume that emotional detachment means shutting yourself off from feelings or becoming cold and distant, let's clear that up. Emotional detachment doesn't mean being numb. It doesn't mean disconnecting from your emotions or becoming unfeeling. It means something far deeper, and that is learning to not let your emotions control you, to separate your inner peace and self-worth from external events, other people's actions or outcomes that are beyond your control. And let's be honest, how often do we let our emotions run the show? How many times have you found yourself chasing validation, feeling overwhelmed by how others respond to you, or being paralyzed by fear of rejection or failure? This is what we're constantly battling. We allow our sense of worth to be tied to how others see us, how well we perform, or how much attention we get. And in doing so, we give away our emotional power. Here's where mastering emotional detachment comes in. Imagine living a life where your happiness, your sense of worth, and your emotional state aren't dependent on anyone else's approval or reactions. Imagine being able to remain calm, centered, and grounded, no matter what happens around you. This isn't a fantasy. This is possible, and it starts with one powerful realization. You can't control everything outside of you, but you can always control your response. The Stoics understood this principle better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful leaders in history, taught that we should focus only on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions, and not let external circumstances disturb our inner peace. Emotional detachment is about realizing that you cannot control what others think or how they behave. You can't control whether someone values you, whether they accept you, or whether they choose to respond to you the way you expect. But you can control how you respond to these situations. When you master emotional detachment, you stop tying your self-worth to other people's actions or opinions. You stop over-analyzing every text, every conversation, every interaction. You stop relying on external validation to define your emotional state. Instead, you find your value within yourself, and that's when your emotional power begins to grow. One of the first things you need to understand about emotional detachment is the power of choice. You get to choose how you respond to situations, and that is a profound power. Think about a time when someone did or said something that upset you. What was your reaction? Did you instantly react, feel hurt, or maybe even lash out? That's normal. We've all been there. But here's the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional detachment. the ability to pause before you react. It's about giving yourself the space to choose your response, rather than letting your emotions take over automatically. When you react impulsively to a situation, you're essentially handing over your power to someone else. You're allowing someone else's actions to determine your emotional state. But when you practice emotional detachment, you recognize that you don't have to react. You can choose not to let someone else's words or actions define how you feel. This doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you don't let them control your behavior or your sense of self. Let's take a practical example. Think about texting or reaching out to someone you're interested in. How many times have you felt that familiar rush of anxiety while waiting for a response? You wonder, did they get the message? Why haven't they replied yet? You start to overthink. Your emotions are taking control. But when you practice emotional detachment, you realize something powerful. Your value is not determined by their response. Your peace and sense of self don't need to be linked to whether someone replies quickly or whether they express interest in the way you want them to. This is a shift that takes time, but it's incredibly freeing. When you detach emotionally, you stop needing validation from others. You understand that your worth is inherent. It doesn't depend on someone else's approval. It's already there, and when you realize this, you stop searching for it externally, and that's when things start to shift. Emotional detachment is also about taking responsibility for your own emotions. We've all been guilty of blaming someone else for how we feel. They made me upset. They hurt my feelings, or they ignored me, and now I'm angry. But the truth is, no one can make you feel anything without your consent. No one can control your emotions unless you allow them to. When you take responsibility for your own feelings, you empower yourself to let go of unnecessary attachment to other people's actions. Now, let's be real. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become indifferent or cold to people. It means you care without losing yourself in the process. You care without becoming emotionally overwhelmed. You care from a place of inner strength, not from a place of neediness or fear of loss. Think about the last time you truly felt at peace with yourself. It's a powerful feeling, right? It's that sense of calm, confidence, and clarity that comes when you stop chasing things outside of yourself and instead focus on building that inner strength. When you let go of the need for constant validation, you start to attract people who respect you for who you are, not for how much you give or how hard you try to please them. Another crucial part of emotional detachment is understanding the role of boundaries. Setting boundaries is a form of self-respect. It's about recognizing that your emotional energy is sacred and that you have the right to protect it. When you don't set boundaries, you're essentially allowing others to dictate how much emotional energy you give away. But when you learn to set clear boundaries, whether it's in relationships, work, or social situations, you take back control. You decide how much you give and when you give it. And this is a direct form of emotional detachment, creating the space for yourself to decide what serves you and what doesn't. Boundaries also give others the opportunity to step up. When you set healthy boundaries, you're allowing people to meet you where you are. You're no longer running after them. Instead, you let them come to you. And this shift creates a more balanced, healthier dynamic where both parties can engage in a way that respects each other's time, energy, and emotional space. When you master emotional detachment, you stop fearing rejection. You stop fearing judgment. You stop living for the approval of others. You start living for yourself. This isn't about becoming emotionally distant. It's about being emotionally independent. Being strong in your own sense of self without relying on anyone else to define your worth. This is the kind of power that is quiet but magnetic. It's the kind of power that draws people in, not because you chase them, but because you stand in your own truth and show them the strength of your presence. As we move forward in this journey of emotional detachment, remember this. The more you practice stepping back, letting go and choosing your responses, the more you will create a life where you are in control of your emotions, your reactions, and your peace. And when you start living from a place of emotional detachment, you'll begin to see that the things you once chased no longer chase you. In the next section, we'll explore how emotional detachment leads to true freedom and how it can transform the way you experience love, relationships, and personal fulfillment. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay with me. Let's talk about something we all do, something that more often than not actually diminishes our power, our presence, and our influence: over-explaining. How many times have you found yourself in a conversation feeling the need to justify your thoughts, explain your actions, or make someone understand you better? It's a natural instinct, right? We've all been there. But here's the truth. When we over-explain, we do more harm than good. We dilute our message, we weaken our position, and we often end up feeling exhausted. What if I told you that the real strength, the kind of influence that lasts, is found in saying less, not more? Let's dive into the art of not over-explaining and why it's the secret weapon to reclaiming your emotional power. First off, over-explaining comes from a place of insecurity. It's our fear of being misunderstood or judged. We feel that in order to be accepted or respected, we need to offer justifications, context, and a flood of reasons behind our decisions, actions, and words. We believe that if we explain ourselves enough, others will see our worth or understand our intentions. But this couldn't be further from the truth. The more we explain, the more we reveal our emotional vulnerability, our need for external validation. And that need for validation is a subtle signal that we lack internal certainty. Think about it for a moment. True power doesn't need to be explained. It stands on its own. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't apologize for existing. It simply is. So, when we constantly over-explain ourselves, we're essentially giving away our power. We're telling others, "I'm not sure about this, but please hear me out. Let me give you all the reasons why this matters." In doing so, we allow them to hold the keys to our self-worth. And that's not how powerful people operate. Let's look at this from a practical perspective. You're in a conversation and someone challenges your opinion or questions your actions. The old you might start to explain yourself, to defend your stance with multiple points, maybe even resorting to excessive details to make sure they see things your way. But guess what? All that does is weakens your position. The more you explain, the more room you give for others to poke holes in your reasoning. And when you explain too much, you also open the door to doubt, both theirs and yours. You start to question your own thoughts, as if you're not sure of what you're saying or doing. And that's a trap. Now imagine you stop. You don't rush to explain. You stand firm in your truth. You speak with confidence, clarity, and conviction, and then you let silence work for you. Silence isn't uncomfortable when you are at ease with your own thoughts. It's the kind of silence that makes people lean in, makes them take notice. It's the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. When you stop over-explaining, you give people a chance to see your inner strength and integrity. You give them room to process, to ask the right questions, and to decide for themselves whether they agree or not. And when you don't need to explain, you stop giving away your power because your presence alone becomes enough. Let's go deeper into the psychology of over-explaining. At the core of this behavior is a desire for control. We want people to understand us exactly as we see ourselves, so we offer more words, more justification, more stories. But here's the kicker. Over-explaining is often an unconscious attempt to control how others perceive us. We fear that if we don't explain ourselves fully, we'll be misunderstood, misjudged, or even rejected. But what happens when we stop explaining? We let go of that need for control. We embrace the discomfort of not having everything perfectly laid out. And that's where the real power lies. in letting go of control and trusting that those who truly understand your worth will get it without needing all the details. So how do we stop over-explaining? The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to the moments when you feel the urge to explain yourself, especially in situations where it's unnecessary. Ask yourself, why do I feel the need to justify this? Often it comes from a place of fear of judgment, fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection. When you catch yourself in the act of over-explaining, pause, take a deep breath, and recognize that you don't need anyone else's approval to validate your choices. Your value is already intact. Next, embrace the power of brevity. This doesn't mean shutting down the conversation. It means being concise, clear, and direct with your words. When you communicate with intention, your words carry more weight. You don't need to fill the silence with endless explanations. Sometimes a simple, "I believe this is the right path for me," is all you need to say. It's confident. It's direct, it's powerful, and most importantly, it's enough. Now, this doesn't mean that you should never explain anything. There are certainly times when context or clarity is necessary. But what we're talking about here is the difference between healthy communication and excessive justification. Healthy communication allows for back and forth, understanding, and mutual respect. Over-explaining, on the other hand, often stems from insecurity and the need to gain external validation. Here's another point to consider. When you over-explain, you're often leaving yourself open to criticism. You're giving others the opportunity to find flaws in your reasoning or to judge your decisions. But when you stop over-explaining, you create a kind of emotional boundary. You don't need to justify your every move. You don't need to be liked by everyone. The people who matter, the ones who respect you, will honor your words without needing to dig for more. And that's a freedom that comes from knowing who you are and standing firm in your beliefs. Let's talk about boundaries for a moment. Setting boundaries is a crucial part of emotional detachment, and it directly ties into the art of not over-explaining. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others, they're about saying yes to yourself. When you stop over-explaining, you're setting a boundary with the world. You're saying, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." And the more you practice this, the more people will begin to respect your boundaries and your time. You will no longer feel the need to explain your worth to anyone. So here's the takeaway. Don't over-explain. Trust your words. Trust your truth. Trust your presence. You don't need to explain everything. And when you stop over-explaining, you will notice something incredible. People will start listening more. They will respect you more. They will be drawn to your confidence, your self-assuredness, and your ability to stand in your truth without seeking constant validation. As we move forward, remember that true power lies in restraint, in choosing when to speak and when to let the silence do the talking. In the next section, we'll explore how mastering this skill creates a sense of mystery and intrigue, and how it deepens the connections you make. It's a powerful shift, and you won't want to miss it. Stay with me. Self-respect is one of the most powerful forces you can cultivate in your life. It is the foundation upon which everything else stands: your relationships, your career, your self-worth. And one of the key components of self-respect is setting boundaries. Boundaries are not just a defense mechanism or a form of protection. They are the clear lines you draw in your life to ensure that your energy, time, and emotional resources are valued and respected. You may have heard people talk about boundaries as if they are something difficult or aggressive to establish. But let me be clear, boundaries are not walls. They are simply a way of communicating what is acceptable to you and what isn't. They are a tool for protecting your peace, for showing the world that you value yourself enough to demand respect. Without boundaries, you are like a sponge, absorbing the energy of everyone around you, often losing yourself in the process. So let's break this down. When you don't set boundaries, You let other people dictate the terms of your life. You say yes when you mean no. You agree to things that drain you, that rob you of your time, your mental space, and your energy. Why? Because deep down there's a fear. A fear of rejection, a fear of being misunderstood, a fear of not being liked. But here's the truth: you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly giving, constantly compromising your own needs, you will eventually burn out. And when that happens, not only do you lose your energy, but you also lose your sense of self. Now, let's talk about the power of setting boundaries and how they relate to self-respect. When you begin to establish clear boundaries, you are signaling to yourself and to others that you matter. Your needs, your time, your emotions are important. You don't need to apologize for taking care of yourself. And in fact, the more you respect yourself, the more others will naturally respect you. Boundaries are a way of standing in your own power, of taking control of your life in a way that doesn't require explanation or justification. But what about the fear of being seen as rude or distant when setting boundaries? A lot of people struggle with this. They don't want to hurt others' feelings or appear selfish by saying no. They don't want to feel like they're disappointing others. Here's the key: self-respect is not selfish. You are not a servant to everyone around you. You are not here to be constantly available to meet the demands of others at the expense of your own well-being. In fact, respecting your own boundaries teaches others how to respect you. When you say no, you're showing them how to interact with you in a way that honors both their needs and yours. Think about this. When you don't respect your own boundaries, you teach others that it's okay to push past them. You teach them that your time and energy are not important. And in return, they will continue to take and take, never truly valuing your worth. But when you draw the line, when you decide that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable enough to protect, that's when true self-respect and mutual respect begin to flourish. Now I want you to think for a moment. When was the last time you said yes to something only to feel exhausted, drained, or resentful afterward? Maybe it was agreeing to help someone when you really needed that time for yourself. Maybe it was constantly answering messages or emails from people who only reach out when they need something. That resentment you feel, that is the signal. That's your inner voice telling you that you've crossed a line. That's your inner self screaming, "I matter too." But here's the good news: you can change this at any time. You can decide right now that you're going to start saying no when you need to. You can begin to set boundaries in every area of your life, with your friends, your family, your co-workers, and even with yourself. Boundaries are not about creating distance, they are about creating space for what truly matters: your well-being, your goals, your happiness. Think about it. When you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're actually saying yes to something that does. You're saying yes to more time for yourself, yes to your health, yes to your personal growth. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love. It's an act of saying, "I am worthy of the respect I give to others, and I will not settle for anything less." Now let's get practical. Let's talk about how you can begin to set boundaries in your own life. 1. Know your limits. This is the first step in establishing boundaries. You have to know what you need, what drains you, and what nourishes you. What are the things in your life that leave you feeling exhausted? What are the people or situations that suck the life out of you? And on the flip side, what brings you peace, joy, and fulfillment? When you become aware of your limits, you can start to protect them. For example, maybe you need quiet time every evening to recharge. That's a boundary. Or maybe you need a break from certain toxic people. That's another boundary. Knowing your limits is the first step in protecting your energy. 2. Communicate your boundaries clearly. Boundaries are only effective when you communicate them. This doesn't mean you need to be harsh or rude, but you do need to be clear. When someone asks something of you that crosses a boundary, calmly and confidently say no. Or, if you need to take a step back, let them know. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. Remember, saying no is not about rejecting the person. It's about protecting your own emotional and mental health. 3. Be consistent. Boundaries work only when you stick to them. If you set a boundary with someone and then repeatedly allow them to violate it, you are sending mixed signals. The more you uphold your boundaries, the more people will respect them. This requires strength and commitment, but the rewards are worth it. People will learn that you are serious about your well-being and that you won't tolerate anything that doesn't honor it. 4. Don't feel guilty. A lot of people feel guilty about setting boundaries. They feel like they're being rude or selfish. But guilt is a sign that you're not prioritizing your needs. Setting boundaries is about respect, not rejection. You're not saying no to the person, you're saying yes to yourself. Remind yourself that your well-being comes first, and the better you take care of yourself, the more you'll have to give to others. 5. Let go of people-pleasing. People-pleasing is a dangerous cycle. It's a habit that stems from a lack of self-respect and the desire to be liked or accepted. But the truth is, you cannot please everyone, and the more you try, the more you lose yourself in the process. Setting boundaries is an act of self-love and self-respect, and it's the key to building healthier, more fulfilling relationships. When you let go of the need to please others, you start to show up as your authentic self, and that's what people are truly drawn to. Now let me ask you something. When you start to honor your own boundaries, what happens? You begin to take control of your life. You stop letting others dictate how you should feel, what you should do, or who you should be. You begin to make decisions that are aligned with your values and your goals. Your self-worth goes up, and the people around you begin to see you as someone who values themselves and their time. You become the kind of person who attracts respect, not because you demand it, but because you live it. As we continue on this journey together, remember that setting boundaries is not just about protecting yourself. It's about creating space for your authentic self to thrive. It's about being the person you were always meant to be. In the next section, we'll dive into how self-respect and boundaries not only empower you, but also improve every relationship you have. It's time to elevate your life by elevating the way you show up in the world. Keep moving forward because your future self is waiting for you. You've probably heard people say that life is full of surprises, but let's dig deeper. What if I told you that unpredictability is not just something that happens to you, but something you can create in your own life to spark connection, attraction, and lasting relationships? The truth is, unpredictability is a powerful force. When applied intentionally, it becomes a tool that shifts the dynamics of any relationship, whether it's with friends, family, or a romantic partner. We all know what it's like to feel stuck in predictable patterns, getting too comfortable, too familiar. But real, meaningful connection is rooted in emotional contrast, and emotional contrast in turn thrives on unpredictability. In this section, I'm going to show you how to harness unpredictability in a way that not only draws people in, but makes you unforgettable. You see, when you break free from the predictable script everyone else is following, you open up space for something much more exciting, something that's far more magnetic and ultimately far more authentic. So let's start with a simple truth. Human beings are wired to seek patterns, but they are also wired to break out of them. Think about it. Predictability creates comfort, yes, but after a while, comfort breeds monotony. When everything feels the same, it loses its thrill. Your brain stops wondering and starts expecting. The excitement fades. But what happens when you step outside of those patterns? When you stop being so predictable? That's when the magic happens. You introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty makes people feel something deep within them. It makes them wonder. It's human nature to be drawn to the unknown. We want to know what's next, but at the same time, we need the curiosity, the mystery, to fuel our desire for connection. Emotional contrast created by unpredictability keeps the energy alive. It's like the perfect balance of light and dark, the right amount of tension to keep the heart beating faster and the mind engaged. This is what makes someone magnetic. They don't need to try. They simply are. Think about the last time you were genuinely captivated by someone. What was it about them? It wasn't just their looks. It wasn't their smooth words or rehearsed charm. No, it was something deeper. It was their energy, the way they moved through the world with an ease that kept you on your toes. They didn't give everything away all at once. They held something back. And that thing left you wanting more. That's emotional contrast at work. That's the magic of unpredictability. But let me be clear. This isn't about playing games or manipulating emotions. Unpredictability, when done right, is a natural extension of who you are. It's about being emotionally alive, being authentic, and refusing to be boxed into a one-dimensional role. It's about knowing when to step forward and when to step back. When you do this, not only do you change the way people perceive you, but you also change the way they feel about themselves. And that's the ultimate power, the ability to affect someone's emotions without saying a word. Now let's break down the concept of emotional contrast a little further. The human heart responds to highs and lows, to the push and pull of emotional tension. If you're always accessible, always predictable, always available, you stop being a challenge, and challenges are what keep us intrigued. Think about a conversation, for example. If someone is constantly texting you, always available, always responding instantly, what happens? You might appreciate the attention at first, but eventually you start to take it for granted. You no longer feel the pull toward them because they've removed the mystery. The thrill is gone. On the other hand, when someone leaves space, gives you room to wonder, to think, to question, it reignites that spark of curiosity. When you stop chasing and start letting others feel that mystery, you create a sense of longing, a desire for more. This isn't about manipulation, it's about self-restraint and emotional intelligence. It's about letting the silence speak louder than words. You see, when you don't immediately respond, when you don't always give them what they expect, you give them something much more valuable, the opportunity to miss you. This kind of unpredictability can be applied to anything in your life. It's in how you show up to a conversation, a relationship, or even a project. If you give people your full attention, if you're fully present but also able to withdraw when needed, you create emotional tension. People won't just walk away thinking, "Oh, that was nice." They'll walk away thinking, "I want to know more. I want to feel that again." And the next time they see you, the anticipation will be there. The emotional contrast will keep them engaged. Let's dive into a practical example. Let's say you're in a dating situation. You've been texting, chatting, getting to know each other, but you notice that things are starting to feel a little too routine. The excitement is fading. What can you do? Create some space. Don't text immediately. Take a step back and let them experience the absence. In that absence, they will fill in the blanks, they will wonder, and they will feel that emotional contrast. And what do you know? The next time you connect, the dynamic will shift. They will engage more because they've been given the space to think about you, to miss you, and to wonder what's next. The same principle applies in your friendships, your work relationships, and even with your family. Unpredictability isn't about being emotionally unavailable. It's about being emotionally alive and active in the moment when it matters, and knowing when to step back and let the space speak. It's about refusing to fall into predictable patterns where you are always the one reaching out, always the one giving, always the one pursuing. It's about allowing people the opportunity to invest in you, to show you that they care. And here's the kicker. When people start to invest in you, they value you more. So, how do you start practicing unpredictability and emotional contrast in your own life? Start small. Don't immediately respond to every message. Don't always agree to every plan. let silence be a tool in your interactions. Next time you're having a conversation, hold back a little. Leave a moment of silence, let the other person fill it. Watch how their curiosity grows. But it's not just about creating space in communication. It's about creating space in how you show up in the world. If you're always predictable, always available, always the one giving, you stop being someone people chase. But when you create a healthy distance, when you give people room to feel your absence, you'll find that they start leaning in, wondering what's next. That's when you become magnetic. In the next section, we'll talk about how self-respect and boundaries tie into unpredictability and how these practices will not only help you create emotional contrast, but also increase your influence and attract the right people into your life. Because when you stand in your truth, when you refuse to play the same old games, you'll find that the right people will seek you out. Not because you've played your cards right, but because your energy is unlike anything they've ever felt before. We've all been there, haven't we? We crave deep, meaningful connections, whether with friends, family, or in romantic relationships. But sometimes in our pursuit of connection, we lose sight of the most important element: balance. And let me tell you, balance isn't just a concept. It's the key to unlocking true, lasting connections that nourish your soul rather than drain you. Now you might be wondering, what do I mean by balance? Well, let's break it down. True connection isn't about being constantly available, constantly giving, constantly chasing approval. It's about knowing when to give and when to hold back, when to engage and when to create space. It's about not getting lost in the noise, not giving everything away at once, but allowing the connection to develop in its own time, with intention and purpose. You see, true connection thrives on a delicate balance. It's the perfect blend of vulnerability and restraint, of emotional availability and emotional boundaries. When you give too much too soon, you risk suffocating the connection. And when you withhold too much, you risk creating distance. But when you get the balance right, you create a space where both people feel seen, heard, and valued. This is the secret to meaningful relationships that don't fade with time, they grow deeper. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever been in a relationship, whether romantic or not, where you gave more than the other person? You might have been the one who always reached out, always made the effort, always put in the work to maintain the connection. At first, it might have felt fulfilling, but after a while you started to notice something. You were giving more than you were receiving. And over time, that imbalance left you feeling drained, frustrated, and maybe even a little resentful. Why? Because deep down, we all know that for a connection to be sustaining, both people need to invest, both need to show up, and if you're the only one putting in the work, you're not building a true connection. You're building a one-sided relationship. Now contrast that with the opposite end of the spectrum. Too much emotional distance, too much detachment. In this case, you might withhold your feelings, your time, your energy, thinking that it's best to play it cool, to hold back, to keep your guard up. But while this might give you a sense of emotional safety, it also keeps you disconnected, not just from the other person, but also from yourself. This emotional detachment might seem empowering in the short term, but in the long run, it creates loneliness. It creates a barrier that prevents real intimacy from forming. If you're constantly emotionally distant, you're preventing yourself from experiencing the very thing you're craving, true connection. So how do you find the sweet spot between these extremes, the balance between giving too much and withholding too much? It starts with self-awareness. You need to first be aware of your own energy, your own emotional needs, and your own boundaries. You need to recognize when you're giving too much out of fear or insecurity, and when you're pulling back too much out of pride or fear of vulnerability. This awareness allows you to show up as your authentic self, not overly dependent, but not overly detached either. It's about standing firm in your own sense of self-worth and knowing that true connection doesn't come from neediness or perfection, but from shared growth. mutual respect, and emotional availability. But let's be real for a second. Balance isn't something that just happens overnight. It's a practice. It's a conscious effort to check in with yourself and assess your actions, your words, and your energy. It's about asking yourself tough questions like, am I giving too much of myself away in this relationship? Am I withdrawing out of fear of rejection or vulnerability? Am I letting the other person show up for me, or am I doing all the work? These questions aren't easy to answer, but they're necessary. And the more you check in with yourself, the easier it becomes to maintain that balance. Here's the beauty of it. When you find that balance, the energy between you and the other person shifts. Suddenly, both of you feel safe to be vulnerable, but you also feel respected. You both feel like the connection is equal, real, and most importantly, sustaining. But it doesn't stop there. True connection also comes from mutual growth. Both people need to be willing to evolve within the relationship. Growth doesn't happen when you're constantly trying to fix or change the other person. It happens when you both show up with a shared sense of intention to support, to challenge, and to inspire each other to become better versions of yourselves. This growth isn't always comfortable. It means having the courage to call each other out when necessary, to have difficult conversations, and to push each other to rise above old patterns. But this kind of growth is what creates lasting, meaningful connection. Now let's talk about what happens when you don't have balance. When you're the one who's always giving and never receiving, or when you're always emotionally unavailable, the imbalance creates tension, and not the good kind of tension that leads to growth. No, it's the kind of tension that creates frustration, dissatisfaction, and ultimately disconnection. Relationships become strained, and instead of feeling closer, you start to feel more distant. You start to feel like you're living in two separate worlds, despite sharing the same space. But when balance is present, that tension is productive. It pushes both of you forward. It challenges both of you to be more present, to communicate better, and to show up with intention. It creates a flow, a natural rhythm to the relationship where both people feel equal and valued. It's not a competition, and it's not about one person trying to dominate the other. It's about creating a space where both people can be themselves, authentically and freely, and still come together to build something beautiful. And that's what we're all looking for, right? A relationship where we feel seen, heard, and valued, not for what we give, but for who we are. When we find that balance in our relationships, we don't have to chase approval, we don't have to prove our worth. We simply be, and we attract the right people who can meet us where we are. In the next section, we'll dive into how to maintain this balance and how to create boundaries that protect your energy while still allowing for deep connection. Because let me tell you this, boundaries aren't walls. They are the foundation of healthy, balanced relationships. They give you the space to show up fully without feeling overwhelmed or drained. They give you the strength to stay grounded, even when everything around you feels chaotic. So, let's continue this journey of building true, lasting connections, not based on need or obligation, but on mutual respect, shared growth, and the perfect balance of vulnerability and restraint. Balance isn't just the secret to great relationships. It's the key to a fulfilled, empowered life. Stay with me, because the next part of this conversation is going to take you even deeper into the practice of creating those boundaries and keeping your energy intact while cultivating genuine connections. We've spent the last few minutes exploring a powerful truth, a truth that could change the way you approach relationships, success, and life itself. You've heard about the power of balance, the importance of self-respect, and the critical need for boundaries. But now, it's time to bring it all together with one simple yet transformative concept, the shift from chasing to becoming. Let me ask you, what happens when you stop chasing? When you stop running after approval, validation, and the constant need to be seen. What happens when you stop trying to force connections, to win people's love or attention, and instead choose to focus on becoming the best version of yourself? I'll tell you what happens. Everything changes. The moment you stop chasing, you begin to create a space where you are no longer dependent on others to feel whole. You start attracting the right people, the right opportunities, and the right energy into your life. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've become the kind of person who naturally draws people in with your presence. Becoming isn't about doing more or being more for the sake of others. It's about evolving into who you truly are, grounded in your own sense of worth and purpose. When you stop chasing, you start embodying. You embody your values, your goals, your intentions. And that, my friend, is magnetic. Think about the people in your life who are most attractive to you. Not necessarily in a romantic sense, but those who you gravitate toward, who leave a lasting impact on you. What is it about them? Are they constantly reaching out to you, begging for your attention? No, they are self-assured. They have a sense of peace about them. They walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. And here's the secret. They don't need to chase because they've already mastered the art of being. You see, when you chase something, you send a message that you lack something. You're telling the universe, I need this to feel complete. But when you focus on becoming, you no longer have to chase. People are drawn to you because you've already created that inner peace. You don't need to prove yourself, you simply are. That's the quiet power that speaks volumes. Let's be clear, this isn't about being passive. This isn't about sitting back and waiting for things to fall into your lap. It's about choosing your path, your actions, and your relationships with clarity and purpose. It's about owning your life and stepping into your own power without constantly seeking validation or approval. It's about moving with intention, creating an energy that's grounded in self-respect, and letting that energy be the force that attracts rather than chases. And this shift, it's not just about relationships, it's about everything. It's about how you show up in your career, your passions, and your personal growth. Imagine not having to chase the approval of your boss or the praise of your peers. Imagine showing up as someone who is already confident in their abilities, already aligned with their values, and already secure in their worth. That's when things start to fall into place. Chasing leaves you exhausted, unfulfilled, and empty. Becoming fills you up with a sense of purpose, peace, and abundance. When you become, you create the space to connect deeply, not just with others, but with your own soul. You stop performing and start living. You stop trying to be someone you're not for someone else's approval, and you start embracing who you truly are. That's where the magic happens. Now, I want you to think about how you can start making this shift in your own life today. What areas have you been chasing validation or approval? Is it in your relationships, your job, or your self-worth? It's time to stop. It's time to become the person you've always been meant to be. Own your space, own your peace, own your worth. When you do that, the right people will find you, the right opportunities will come your way, and the right energy will surround you. Remember, the journey from chasing to becoming is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your life. It starts with self-awareness, knowing when you're giving too much, doing too much, or trying too hard. But it doesn't end there. It ends with self-respect, self-love, and the understanding that your worth doesn't depend on what others think, say, or do. It's rooted in who you are at your core. So, as we wrap up this conversation, I want you to leave here with one thought. Stop chasing. Start becoming. Become the person who doesn't need validation, who doesn't need to be constantly seen or heard. Become the person who stands in their truth, whose energy naturally attracts the right connections and opportunities. When you do this, you will not only change your relationships, but also transform the way you experience life. And if this message resonated with you, if you felt that shift in your soul, then let me invite you to take the next step. Subscribe, like, and share if you're ready to walk this path with me, to continue learning and growing with intention, because this journey of becoming is only just beginning. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to invest in yourself. Stay grounded, stay true, and let your presence speak louder than any words ever could. You don't have to chase anything. You already have everything you need. Now go and become who you were always meant to be.